So I think we can start. Okay, I'm starting with introduction to bioinformatics. I think most of you are lecturers or research scholars from many of the institutions in and around Kerala and also outside Kerala. I think 3 of you are from Lucknow. Which institute can you please introduce? Which institute? University of Lucknow. Okay, 3 of you. So to introduce, or many of you may have heard of bioinformatics and bioinformatics tools because it's a part of today's research in life sciences. So when we consider life sciences, now it is very well connected to informatics also. It's not only this what we have heard of zoology or botany or microbiology, biochemistry and so on, but it's now a part of informatics related zoology, botany and so on. It cannot stand still, it cannot stand apart from all these different. Now, what is bioinformatics in context? Because we have heard of proteomics, genomics and so on. You have been studying about genomics when you were studying evolution, ecology, as genomics. So all these are linked through bioinformatics. That is the new era of bioinformatics. So it is genomics, then molecular biology, then it has some ethical, legal and social implications, and it relates mathematics or computer sciences, then it relates biophysics and it relates molecular evolution. So in genomics, we have heard of bacterial genomics, human genomics, then metagenomics, then what else? Many genomic pathways like plant genomics, it stands different. So many genomics levels of bioinformatics. Then molecular biology. When we deal with pathways and biochemical reactions, it comes molecular related bioinformatics. Then ethical and legal and social implications, like when we are doing DNA fingerprinting, parental analysis and so on, there comes this ethical, legal and social implications of bioinformatics. And then it relates to computer science or mathematics that we all know. It is related to programming, and there is what is called artificial intelligence. All these are required in bioinformatics. Then we need biophysics for bioinformatics, that is the computational approaches for bioinformatics. Then molecular evolution. There we are, I think all of us are focusing on phylogenetic tree, phylogenetic relationships. So to derive all this, we have to depend on molecular evolution. So all these comes under bioinformatics, or we can say not comes under bioinformatics. All these are related to bioinformatics. Then let us just say the development or history of bioinformatics. It has developed along with the computer science. It's only in 1980s that bioinformatics has developed. So definition, it is proposed by Laskow. It defines bioinformatics as a union of biology and informatics. It's not just biology or informatics, it's a union of biology and informatics. So it involves technology that uses computers for storage, retrieval, manipulation and distribution of information related to biological macromolecules such as DNA, RNA and proteins. So it includes, even now it's not DNA, RNA or protein, it involves some other organic and inorganic molecules also. There comes the drugs or in biological data is very high, too much. Because it's not today, if there are only 70,000 genes in human genome, then the next day there will be above 1 lakh. That is the mining of data which is happening in day-to-day bioinformatics. So we can, in the welcome speech or in the speeches here, which we heard here, Mansoor sir, he just mentioned there are about 1 lakh of viral genomes in NCBI. So the data which is deposited or which is available for our retrieval or our usage is very high. It is enormous. It is enormous amount of data which is available, and also it is required also. It's not only it is available, it is required. But which is the data which is to be used and which is not to be used, and which is the data that we require for our particular work and which is to be avoided from our work is what we have to learn while doing bioinformatics. It is not we have to depend on all the data which is available, but we have to focus on what is required and we have to avoid or remove what is not required in our particular work. That is what is we have to learn while learning bioinformatics. It is not just we know that there are very vast amount or enormous data which is available, but we have to consciously work on a surface which is only we have to just select which is required and we have to avoid what is not required. That is what a bioinformatician should do while learning or while working with bioinformatics databases. So, because of the vast or enormous amount of data which is to be required, we have to depend on computational or bioinformatics platforms. Then it consists of two subfields: computational tools and databases. And also, one is developmental process and the other is the application process. In developmental process, it is mostly done by computer related programmers and also some bioinformaticians who can or who are well versed with these computer programs like C, C++, Python, and all these programs they can use for development of tools and databases. But what as a bioscience practitioner or bioinformaticians, what we have to use is the application level. We should know what is the application of these tools which are developed by those computer technicians or computer programmers. So our duty or our requirement is what is the usage of this data or how to use or how to apply all these informations and all these databases. So the tool development, it includes writing with software for sequence, structural and functional analysis, like how they have developed MEGA or how they have developed visualizing protein visualizing programs, visualizing softwares. All those things are developed by computer programmers. So they are used in sequence analysis, structural analysis and functional analysis. Sequence analysis, structural analysis and functional analysis. So we can also divide this analysis in 3 levels: sequence level, structural level and functional level. Sequence level, structural level and functional level. This is the sequence analysis. It includes sequence alignment, which you will be learning. Then sequence database searching, you will be learning again. Then motif and pattern discovery, this is useful in drug designing. Then gene and promoter finding, this is also again applicable in drug designing. Then reconstruction of evolutionary relationships, that is used in research. Then genome assembly and comparison, it is used in whole genome sequencing. These are the different sequence analysis strategies which we use in our research life. Then next is structural analysis. It includes protein and nucleic acid structure analysis. It is the 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional structural analysis that we are using. Then it is used for comparison of different structures of proteins. Then similar proteins produced by different organisms. And then for classification and prediction of structures. Some proteins may be novel. It may not be available in whole database, so it depends on this structural prediction, like homology prediction and like that. Then next is functional analysis. Functional analysis means it includes gene expression profiling, how a particular gene functions in an organism. Then protein-protein interaction. This protein-protein interaction is also important in cancer genomics and cancer studies. Then protein subcellular localization. It is also important. Subcellular localization is important in drug designing, and also it is important in thyroid cancer studies, because this localization, when a drug is introduced into an organism, where it is localized in the cell, either in the DNA or in the cytoplasm or extracellular. That is important. Then metabolic pathway reconstruction. This is also important in molecular medicine and also in gene therapy. Metabolic pathway reconstruction and then simulation. These are the 3 aspects of bioinformatic analysis. That is structure analysis, sequence analysis and function analysis. These are what we have seen in the previous slides. These are the applications of bioinformatics in we should say it is in day-to-day life, because we have seen we have passed through a situation from lab to in silico. We were doing our research, everything in lab before 2020, and in 2020 what we were doing is all in silico. So this is what is the applications of bioinformatics. It uses knowledge, it is applicable in knowledge-based drug design, forensic DNA analysis, agricultural biotechnology. Agricultural biotechnology is another field which involves plant genomics and so on. Then computational studies of protein-ligand interaction. This protein-ligand interaction is what is required in gene therapy, drug designing. Then it provides a rational basis for rapid identification and novel leads for synthetic drugs. Then knowledge of 3-dimensional structures of protein, it allows molecules to be designed that are capable of binding to the receptor sites and target protein with great affinity and specificity. This is also drug designing. Then the time and cost required to develop a new drug is reduced by the application of bioinformatics, because we can just design a new molecule which acts on a target or the active site, and then we can design or we can synthesize that particular molecule as drug. Then genomics and bioinformatics are now poised to revolutionize our healthcare system by developing personalized and customized medicine. This personalized medicine, it is used in many parts of European countries and UK, such that they will first screen the cancer patients, especially in cancer treatment. They will first screen the cancer patients for the expression of particular genes which are involved in cancer development, cancer metastasis, and then they will develop a treatment strategy for coping up with that type of cancer, because every cancer is different, every person is different, every cancer is different, and so they are using such a strategy for cancer therapy in UK and European countries. So they also have a database called the Cancer Genome Atlas, TCGA. The Cancer Genome Atlas, which is an enormous database that contains patient samples, their genomic DNA sequences, their RNA sequences which are expressed RNAs, then NGS sequences, and so on, for different types of cancers. That is TCGA. Then plant genome databases and gene expression profile analysis have played an important role in the development of new crop varieties, and it also take part in development of disease resistant types. Then what are the limitations? Are we too much into this bioinformatics, or are we less into this bioinformatics? What do you feel? We are less. Or are we depending too much on bioinformatics? Yes, we are depending too much on this bioinformatics or databases, because once we were depending very less because we were unaware of it. But now we are depending too much on bioinformatics in such a way that we cannot predict if it's right or wrong. There are situations in identification of bacteria in which sometimes a bacillus species will be very much similar to E. coli or Pseudomonas. There are situations. So it is due to this, sometimes somebody else will be, curation is less. Somebody else will be submitting the data in a database, because everyone can submit. All of us can submit. So someone will be submitting without a clear knowledge of their organism. So they will be naming, maybe a misnaming or a wrong naming will lead to wrong identification by others also. True. Big limitation of bioinformatics. So completely relying on computer intelligence can also be dangerous because of its limited accuracy. It is not accurate. It is submitted by different persons in different situations. So we cannot say they are very accurate data. Sometimes there will be curation. Some databases, some institutions like NCBI, they have started cross-checking the data which are submitted by other researchers. So they are making it too much authentic, that they are making, or they are trying to make it reliable. So over reliance on poor quality intelligence can yield costly mistakes, if not complete failures. Then bioinformatics depends on experimental science to produce raw data for analysis. Sometimes there will be too much sequencing errors which may be arise due to their PCR technique or some other lab methods, so that there will be erroneous data in the databases. So it may lead to some erroneous identifications also. So any questions in this session? This was only an introduction. If you have any questions, you can ask now.
That NCBI is now cross-checking the sequences which are being submitted to them.
Yes.
So can you please elaborate the methodology which they are adopting? What kind of cross-checking? How can they authenticate?
For example, it happened to me when I submitted an organism by name Bacillus pumilis. I recognized it as Bacillus pumilis by 16S sequencing, and when I submitted the whole genome, they recognized it as Bacillus sapiensis by cross-checking in their own database, their own sequence analysis methods. So it is different in this Bacillus pumilis, and Bacillus sapiensis is different only by gyrase BG. sequence. So such smaller level or minute level of sequencing differences we may not notice, but they will curate it and they will let us know. And then what we have to do is, earlier I submitted it as Bacillus pumilus, so I have to rectify that again. Maybe that cross-checking may not happen always.
Yes.
Because it will be one in whole genome data, it will be Bacillus abensis, and in 16S data, it will be Bacillus pumilus. That may happen. So it is our duty to rectify these errors.
A related question is that in case of the bacterial world, I think it is the 99% similarity which is stick to.
In bacteria, usually it is said that the database is enormous, as I said earlier. So there will be 100%, there should be, this what they say, but usually we will get only, sometimes we will get only 99% similarity in case of Bacillus, because it is every day a new species is identified in Bacillus. So that difference will be there in Bacillus species, but I think we can go for 99 also, 99%. But the case is that I got 100% similarity with Bacillus pumilus, that also an ATCC culture. So that is the point where we have to look for other methods for identification.
Of course.
We can depend on DNA hybridization methods or ANI methods like average nucleotide identity, like that, for confirming the species level. In higher organisms, we can see that above 95% similarity is enough in higher organisms. And sometimes in fish species, like fish barcoding, when we are doing fish barcoding, it is said that 85 above is okay for identification, because they will be morphologically identified and then only they will be submitting. So morphological identification is also an important aspect of species identification.
Of course it is. But don't you see it as an inconsistency in terms of molecular results when the range is from 85% to 99%?
It also depends on the length of the sequence, because when we are doing PCR amplification and when we are giving it for sequencing, sequencing will be done by someone else.
Sure.
So they will be doing sequencing and there will be some erroneous parts on both sides of the sequence, which if we are giving about 10,000 kb for sequence, you will get only 800 or 500 above for submitting. That there comes the discrepancy, because the other sequences are all cut off and we cannot say it should be like they got only that much sequence for analysis when we are submitted in BLAST.
Do you have any idea about how can we authenticate by ourselves that whatever sequence we have got is really a good one?
No, it is real sequence analysis data. When we submit in like ABI sequencer is there, it will give us peaks.
Yes.
So when the peaks are even, then we can say that it is a good data. And when the peaks are noisy, then we can say it is noisy peaks are to be avoided by selecting the sequences.
I mean, if suppose a gene...
And also we usually use a color code, like when the sequence is represented in red color, then we will avoid that also. Like we have to recheck it.
Right. Now, for example, if a gene sequence is about 600 base pair long, and if it doesn't have any stop codon or something, can we conclude that it's clean?
It's clean.
Yeah.
A stop codon, if we are doing a gene, there may be some stop codons because it's only a partial sequence.
Yes,
if
partial.
it is a partial sequence, there will be stop codons. But if there are too much stop codons, the NCBI won't accept it for submission. I think clear. Any doubts? No. I think we can go for the next session. So these types of data collections are deposited in a repository like or a computer program. Then it is called a database. So a database is a computerized archive used to store and organize data in such a way that the information can be retrieved easily through a variety of search criteria. When we are storing something in Word or Excel, then we can do Ctrl F. That is the basic program to find out a search word. Then, so like such programs are required to retrieve these data also. So that is called a database. Then the chief objective of database development of database is to organize data. We will get a highly organized data in database, or we can save highly organized data in a database. Then we can see that some people will store their data when we are doing PhD. I think most of you have done PhD or are doing PhD. So when we do PhD, we will search for different types of manuscripts, papers, research publications, and when we are depending on methodologies, we will save it somewhere. We won't name it properly, we will save it somewhere, and when you want to do that method, for example, DNA isolation, we have searched it somewhere from NCBI, from a database from Google, and then we have downloaded it, saved it somewhere. Then how will we search for it when we are looking, or on the actual day when we are in need for that paper, we won't find it. We won't find it. What happens? Waste our time searching for this paper. This happens to everyone. We won't name it properly. We will download it, keep it somewhere in a pen drive or in another pen drive or a friend's pen drive or in our own laptop. We won't remember where we have kept that or downloaded that manuscript. We'll be wasting our time searching for that manuscript. Maybe it will be an important reference or discussion for our work. So that type of data is not required. What we require is a proper naming, a proper identification, make it in folders, keep it in folders. If it's a methodology related paper, then keep a folder like methodology. Then we can save in that. It does not mean that Google Download will save everything into the download folder. We can change the destination. So like that, we don't like an unorganized data for database platforms. We need organized data for data retrieval function and also for data search purpose. So that is what is saved in a database. It will be highly organized. Then when we search for it, it is called a query. When we search for a database, search in a database for a particular organism or particular gene, then it is called a query. Then types of database, there are flat files format. Flat file formats, it will be separated by a delimiter, that is a vertical bar. That is called a flat file format. Then, and each entry is separated by commas. But when the number of data is too much, then it will be difficult to find out and search and find out from this flat file format. So this type of flat file format was used in Macintosh, so it is also called MFS. Then now what is used is hierarchical file system, that is HFS. Flat file is mostly not used now, but some programs use flat file formats also. Database management systems, relational database management system and object-oriented database management systems. Relational database management system uses flat files and object-oriented database systems uses hierarchical files. These are just for your information. I'm just because when you are reading something and terms like this comes into focus, then you will avoid reading that paper. Then it is available in a database management system, and then it is available in the applications page or in the other database. It will be connected to other database management systems, and a user can directly find out the data in a database management system. This is what are the different types of biological databases available. You have heard of many of these databases. EMBL is European Molecular Biology. NCBI is National Center for Biotechnological Information. Then PubMed, PDB, that is PDB is Protein Data Bank. Reactome, the Cancer Genome Atlas, which I have mentioned, and many other databases. These databases are mainly saved by or run by different institutions, and they are providing free access to many of these databases to public worldwide. It's not like, so they may require huge funding also for maintaining these types of databases. So it says what are the different types of databases. The slide is saved in this laptop. Okay. So then when we classify different types of databases, we can say that there are primary databases, secondary databases, and tertiary databases. Primary databases, they save sequences, and primary, like what we have saved, like a sequence or a protein sequence or a DNA sequence, that is called a primary database. Then what is secondary database? Secondary database is what is derived from the primary database. When we say a protein sequence, then it will give the secondary structure, or when we say a DNA sequence, it will give the translated proteins, and so on. That is called a secondary database. And then tertiary database, it says about the tertiary structure like atomic coordinates, then tertiary protein structures, foldings, like that. These are tertiary databases. So databases can be classified into primary database, secondary database, and tertiary database. Composite or tertiary. So what are the different primary databases? Primary databases which are available are GenBank. We are all familiar with GenBank. It is maintained by NCBI. Then EMBL, that is European Molecular Biology Laboratory. They are saving a primary database. Then DDBJ. All these are interconnected also. When we submit a sequence in NCBI, it will be automatically available in EMBL and DDBJ. And all these are freely available. And most of the bioinformaticians, I should say all of you are bioinformaticians. So as bioinformaticians, we depend mainly on freely available softwares and freely available resources. A spark will come from our eyes when it says it is free. So we are depending on, and all of these are provided freely. For nucleic acids, we can submit usually we submit in GenBank. So these are the icons of different primary biological databases: EMBL, NCBI, DDBJ. Then for protein, this PIR, Protein Information Resource. Then SwissProt. Then TREMBL. SwissProt and TREMBL, they are SwissProt maintains this TREMBL. They are interconnected.
And UniProt is also?
UniProt is also there. Actually, it is PIR and UniProt. Then UniProt, in UniProt, SwissProt, TREMBL, and two variants of TREMBL are there. So these are the protein primary databases. These are all primary databases for protein and nucleic acids. These are all interconnected. This EMBL, DDBJ and GenBank. It is maintained by International Advisory Meeting Collaborative. Then secondary database. Secondary database, it contains data derived from or information derived from primary database. So secondary database, it contains entries of PDB in an organized way, that is protein data bank in an organized way. So these contains entries. This, if we are giving a protein sequence as primary database, then what will be there in the secondary database? There secondary structures like number of helices, turns, alpha structure, beta structure and so on. It will be available in the secondary database. And many of the secondary databases are also available online. SwissProt, it is a detailed sequence annotation that includes structure, function and protein family assignment. Then SwissProt, TREMPL and PAR, they led to the creation of UniProt database. UniProt, it is composed of data from SwissProt, TREMPL and PAR. TREMPL means translated EMBL. These are the major, just for your visualization, just for you to understand what are the different types of biological databases available in internet. Then this TREMPL, it consists of SP TREMPL, that is SwissProt TREMPL. It contains the entries, like now it is 1,79,066, which should be eventually incorporated into SwissProt. So when it is categorized in SP TREMPL, it will be available in SwissProt. But in the next one, REM TREMPL, that is the remaining data available in TREMPL, it will not be incorporated into SwissProt. So we can say that TREMPL, it contains two sections. One is SP TREMPL and the other is REM TREMPL, where SP TREMPL will be later available in SwissProt, but REM TREMPL will not be available or will not be made available in SwissProt later. It is a different section of database, remaining TREMPL. So it includes immunoglobulins, T-cell receptors, short fragments, synthetic and patented sequences. REM TREMPL, it includes immunoglobulins, T-cell receptors, short fragments and synthetic and patented sequences. And other primary database, protein databases, PIR. PIR is Protein Information Resource. It helps in rapid searching, comparison and pattern matching of protein sequence. It helps in retrieval of descriptive, bibliographic, when we retrieve some data, we will get the reference also related to that data. This is another PIR related database. This NRL3D gives the structure. When we say 3D, gives the structure also. It is produced from PIR. It allows keyword and similarity searches. Then PatchX integrated with PIR. It is a non-redundant database of protein sequence. It gives a complete collection of protein sequence data currently available in public domain. Usually we use PDB to download the sequences. These are different sequence databases available online. These are all protein sequence databases. Usually we download protein sequence database depending on PDB, protein database data bank is there. We will download protein structure. We can download protein structure in 3D format from PDB. In .pdb, we usually use .pdb while saving the structure of protein. I think there will be some other sessions dealing with the protein structure and formats, file formats. Then apart from these conventional databases of protein and DNA, there are some specialized databases. Like examples are Flybase, Wormbase, AceDB, TAIR, then BacTbase. BacTbase, it says about bacteriocins. So these are specialized databases which deals with special types of proteins or special types of DNA sequences. Bagel is there, Baegel. Bagel, it says about, it also includes secondary metabolites, and it will predict genes for secondary metabolites and bacteriocins and other antibiotic genes. Like siderophore genes are predicted by Bagel, Bagel. Mostly people not bioinformaticians, the other biosciences research people, they depend on these specialized databases for their own sequence searches. Like when I was doing my PhD, I was depending on BacTbase, which is for bacteriocin, and Bagel for finding out the siderophore genes or secondary metabolite production genes from this organism. What we need is to sequence the whole genome of an organism and then assemble it and then submit into any of these databases. Then you will get the prediction, like which all genes are involved in production. Maybe they will be involved in production of some other secondary metabolites and so on. So these types of specialized genes databases are very, very useful in bioscience research. Then functional analysis genes. Then what I said is TCGA. It is another specialized database. It contains this microarray data, MiSeq data, miRNA sequence data, and many other sequencing data of different types of cancer, in initial stage of cancer and also in developed cancer stages, different stages of cancer and different types of cancers, and people can use it as a pipeline. Have you heard of the term pipeline in bioinformatics? It is a series of programs which can be used online itself. Like different programs will be linked together in a single website, retrieve the data, like which all genes are involved in this particular cancer, what is the relationship of for example, DNMT. DNMT is methylation, it's involved in methylation. So DNMT genes, what is the involvement of methylation genes in the cancer progression? All those things can be retrieved from this TCG. So such analysis can also be done in these online databases. Maybe repeated data in different names is also a problem. Then the over-reliance on sequence information and related annotations without understanding the reliability of the information. We have to first understand, or we have to first have an idea of what we are doing and what we are submitting, and then only we can rely completely on these databases. Then the database providers are also doing from their part to reduce these types of erroneous data. Then erroneous annotations, the same gene sequence is found under different names resulting in multiple entries. That is another pitfall of biological database. I think we can, the introduction to databases, you got an idea of what is a database, what are primary and what are secondary databases, and what are composite databases. I did it with whole genome. You can, if you have any particular genes predicting, knowing that, or you have sequenced some genes, then you can upload that also. A faster format is required, that's enough.
So by putting the full sequence into this, we can
Yes. They will give the sequence, the position in the genome, and so on. It is like in database, many of us are afraid of using these computer programs and computer internet, because I don't know why we are afraid of, but we are something is hindering us from using this type of data and databases. That's what we have to remove all those from our mind, and then as a free bird, because nothing is going to happen. It will not spoil your sequence, or you have to just make it another copy and then you have to play on it. That is what we have to require while studying bioinformatics.
So it's legal itself is a software, right?
It's not a software, it's a pipeline, it's a database.
How to change?
It is a database, and when we search for Bagel 4, it will come in Google. In the
Ma'am, is there any special database for fungus?
fungus, I think, yes, there was something, some databases which it will be available. Usually there are different databases, and some of them are stopped for now.
Is there any
because-
paid databases? Paid?
No, the paid databases are not paid, only the programs are paid. We are using it, but the thing is that some of the databases are not curated for a long time. They have just reported it and left it. So many databases are like that. So we have to depend on recent publications and recent advances to see what are the novel, or if they are live even now, these databases, because some databases may not be curated for years.
And then we can move on to the databases, the online thing, okay, hands-on thing. So next is information retrieval. So all these databases are being stored for what purpose? For retrieval or our usage or our manipulation. So these informations are being retrieved from these biological databases for our research purpose. So the most popular retrieval system is, one is NRES and the other is SRS. So these are the systems that we use, but what we are using is not this only through these databases, not the systems. But for you to familiarize with the terms, I am just showing this. One is NRES. NRES is a database retrieval system, and the other is sequence retrieval systems, SRS. So it provides access to multiple databases for retrieval of we have seen that all these databases are linked together, DDBJ, NCBI and what else? GenBank. All these GenBank, DDBJ and EMBL, all these were linked together. So we can retrieve either through EMBL or through DDBJ, or the main platform that is used is NRES for retrieval, and it requires the use of Boolean operators. Boolean operators, what are Boolean operators? And or not. And or not. All these terms, search terms are also included in the or also required for our search system. And means it will give both, that is, it will give what is included, and or means it will give all the data, and not means it will avoid something and we will get only a portion of it. And the other Boolean operator is parenthesis, means brackets. Parenthesis, it defines a concept if multiple words and relationships are involved. These are just terms which you have just be aware of, not what you may not be, sometimes may not be using it, but this is NRES, it is developed by NCBI, then it can be accessed through NCBI website. Then in NCBI, not only that we can get the sequences, assembly and all, we also will get abstracts, papers, what are all there in PubMed, all these things are linked, and so we will get all those things from NRES, using NRES. Then what we have to do while searching. So some search terms are also very important while retrieving data from databases, usually NCBI. We usually use NCBI for data retrieval, and here the option 1 is limits, which helps to restrict the search to a subset of particular database. That I will show you while doing the our search, which all are the options while we can do for searching. Then preview or index, which connects different searches with Boolean operators. It uses a string of. Then history, we can have a search history in the NCBI database. Then we can have a clipboard where we can store the things in NCBI. The first and foremost thing is that you have to, these are certain Boolean search terms used in NCBI. All these are certain terms which you have to just familiarize with. When we are doing it, then we can see what are. Then another is PubMed. PubMed is also a where you can get so many data related like manuscripts and abstracts in PubMed. So many publications and journals are listed in PubMed. Then here what it allows is smart search terms. We can see what is the difference between Google and NCBI. Google is also a search platform and NCBI is also a search platform. What is the difference? When we search in Google, it will give all the related wanted or unwanted, everything will be listed out in that Google search. But when we search in NCBI, we will get only the particular, or if it is scientific, we require only those scientific things or scientific substances. So what is being shown is only those scientific data will be available in NCBI, but in Google we will get all the terms and everything related to that particular search term. So that is the difference between NCBI and Google. That means we have so many search platforms, but Google is the most widely used. So there are other platforms like Google, Bing is there. So which is more useful, Bing or Google? Google Scholar is there. Scholar we use for retrieval of manuscripts. We will get many PDF format manuscripts in PDF formats in Google Scholar. So our purpose defines the search engine, or our purpose is what is we have to define. So these are the several selected PubMed tags and their brief descriptions. We can see certain tags while searching in PubMed. Then OMIM, it is a non-sequence based database, that is no sequence is being saved in OMIM, but it says it is an online Mendelian inheritance in man. It is a database for online Mendelian inheritance in man, but it does not contain any sequence database. So it is based on certain human disease genes and genetic disorders. Just like what I said in Cancer Genome Atlas, it is related to so many cancer related genes. like that. So, there is no sequence in that Cancer Genome Atlas TCGA database. So, like that here OMIM, it is also a non-sequence based. So, each entry in OMIM, it contains summary information about a particular disease as well as genes related to that disease. It is only the gene names are there, not the sequence. GenBank database in NCBI, you can just go through NCBI database just after this session, where we can see a large number of, we can go through this. I will just show you how we can see this is the GenBank sequence format. When we see a sequence or when we download a sequence in GenBank format, it will be like this. It will have a header region, header which gives the locus definition, accession number, then keywords about the organism, source of the organism, and all those terms comes under header. Then a features region where the genome features or the sequence feature will be given, and then the sequence. This is a general GenBank. GenBank format is designated as .gb, .gb. That is the GenBank format. Also, we have another format, FASTA format. This is all GenBank format regions. Then the other is FASTA format. There comes a greater than sign, then certain number like accession number or a strain number, then strain name. That greater than sign or the right angle bracket is the most important part of a FASTA sequence. That is the recognizing tag of that FASTA format, that greater than sign, and it will be usually followed by a sequence name. You can edit it in text. Text is there in our computer. We can edit this FASTA, open this FASTA format in text and edit it in text. It is only, then there comes the sequence. Sequence will be either DNA sequence or DNA, RNA or protein sequence will be after the greater than sign. If it has an accession number, then an accession number, then followed by a name of the organism or name of the gene, and then the sequence. That is what is a FASTA format. Clear? Any doubts in these formats? No. Anyone doing whole genome assembly or whole genome related work, or anticipating to do whole genome related work? Sorry? Partial genome sequencing, not whole genome. Okay. So, this is for an introduction about databases, database retrieval of data and all. Now we can go to NCBI, familiarizing you to these types of databases and how to retrieve these data. And when you are searching for something in NCBI, we can see that here there is all databases. It shows all the data, and when we click the down arrow, we can see a different collections. See, so what all collections are available in NCBI? This is assembly. Assembly means whole genome assembly. Then bio collections means some biological sample but may not be completely organized. Then bio project is something like when we are uploading a whole genome sequence in the FASTQ format, or just assembly, not just assembly, it is like a project, and then they will give the assembly and whole things. Domain, mesh was something which I mentioned in the earlier Entrust search. Then NLM catalog, nucleotide OMIM, protein family models. See, we can search in all database. If we search, we will get the number of data in each set. If we are searching for Bacillus pumilus, it will give a result saying see from whole, see what is there in literature, the genes, ഈ കമ്പ്യൂട്ടർ ആയിരുന്നു ഇത്തിരിയും കൂടെ സുഖം, ഈ മോണിറ്റർ ഇങ്ങനെ തിരിച്ചു വെക്കായിരുന്നെങ്കിലേ. You can see the proteins in these proteins listed from these conserved domains, identical protein genome, then proteins, family models, and all those things which come under Bacillus pumilus will be listed. Have you seen? Okay. Under the genome? Yes. Yes.
So the number 155 reflects that 155 times has been submitted in politics or
Sorry.
what is number signifying?
It is the number of assemblies which are submitted. Yeah. It is the number of assemblies which are submitted in the name of Bacillus pumilus.
Is it what you were talking about, the redundancy?
Yes. So, but may not be wrong, because that number of organisms will be there, the strains will be different. If you are submitting a strain by name NCH something, I would have been submitted some by name SDL something, and so the strains will be different, but the assemblies anyway all these are listed under Bacillus pumilus. And bioprojects, usually this bioproject and assembly are related. So when we are submitting a new organism, we will be submitting it as a bioproject. Then biosample, see this is the number of biosamples available and their details available in NCBI. See, this is but related to Bacillus pumilus, not Bacillus pumilus. It is not a data of Bacillus pumilus, but see this is MGIS cultured bacterial or archaeal sample from Bacillus pumilus. It is not Bacillus pumilus. So such data will be available from biosample. Any biosamples associated with that organism will be listed in biosample. Then we can just click, everything is hyperlinked. So we can just click and go through and read and understand. That's what we are doing in bioinformatics. Just we can click and go. Don't be afraid to click, because it will just go through the next website, or only thing is we are hindered is our starting trouble, or our fear of what will happen next, if it will go from our site, that's all. But nothing like that will happen. You can just scroll through, just click and see. We can download assemblies, but see this is an assembly of a whole genome of Bacillus pumilus. It comes under Firmicutes. Usually assembly will be named, or the accession number for assembly will be like this, assembly ASM. Then genome will say the number of reports and things like that. We can have the genome here. This is a reference genome. Size, proteins, GC content, everything will be given in that genome Like it is an average of all the genomes which are submitted in NCBI related to Bacillus, not related to, about Bacillus pumilus. This is the whole search. Then if we want to search something like if you want to search in nucleotide and you want to search the 16S, and so if you want to search for an organism, you can search by its accession number. So if you know an accession number, see this is the accession number and you can search by its accession number. And if you are searching for a 16S, there will be, you can just name it as 16S and then only the 16S sequences will be there. And if by accident, if some other sequences than 16S comes, then you have to search for here the base pair sizes. If it is greater than, or what is the size and what are the descriptions given in that particular search. Okay. This is how we search for a DNA, and if you want, I will just click on this and I will show you one more thing. This is that of a 16S DNA, the sequence, and here see this is the GenBank format what we have described. See, it is, if you are in a dilemma like which is the organism, what is the name of the organism, species name to be given for a particular sequence, then you have to just see what is the source of the organism, when it was submitted, and such details. For that you have to just click on and see who has submitted the sequence, what is the source of the organism. If they have described any publications, you can go through that, and then you can decide which is the name to be given to that. Species name will be always in a dilemma, like there will be too many species which is related. So you can decide on that. See, it was submitted by Isuka et al. Isolation phylogenetic analysis of aerobic, capiotrophic, ultra microbacteria from urban soil. So the source is soil itself, and if your organism is also from soil, then it's okay. So like that you have to see what are the things which you have to consider. So this is the header region, these are the features, then this is the sequence. And if you want, how will you download a sequence? Usually we want some sequences for our analysis. So how will you download a sequence? Can we do a copy paste from here? It won't give a FASTA format, right? We have to do so many editing to get a FASTA format. So when you want to download, see here you have a send to region and then to file. So then you have to select the format. If we want, for some purposes we need GenBank format, and for some other purposes we need FASTA format. So we can download in FASTA or GenBank format, whichever is necessary, and almost all these details, because for some comparison we need feature table, for some other comparison like pangenome analysis we need GFF table, like GFF file, like that. So you can download from here, you can download FASTA format, and then FASTA, just click and create file, means it will create a new file and you can select the destination. Shall I do it? See, this downloaded. See this, here the download is automatically to downloads, I think. So how to open? It is in sequence.fasta format. So select a program. You can select Notepad. This is the FASTA format of the sequence. A greater than sign with accession number, name of the organism, name of the gene, details of the gene, and then the sequence. So this is the FASTA format. Okay. You did it for yourself? You did it yourself in those systems? So, and if you want to download in GenBank format, the same thing you can download in GenBank format, and also it will ask the program, supporting program, you can open in Notepad. Again, you can open GenBank formats also. Almost all the programs of bioinformatic programs can be opened in Notepad. See, it gives the locus and all the details in GenBank format. Okay. Any doubts? This is how what we get after searching in an assembly. See, I have searched for Bacillus hafensis SDG 14. Bacillus hafensis SDG 14. So what comes is the number of, this is the accession number of biosample, this is the accession number for bioproject, and this is submitted by, then genome representation, GenBank assembly accession number, reference sequence accession number, and so on. This was submitted in whole genome project, this one. We can get, this is submitted by myself, we can get genome annotation data, the total sequence length, ungapped length, the number of contigs. This is what is the whole genome assembly that we get after submission. You can download the assembly also, and from the assembly you can download from GenBank the file type. Different types of files will be there. Here, see, the FASTA format is usually in either FAS or in FNA. .FNA or FAS, both are FASTA formats. Understand? There are different file formats. So, of this .FAS is the usually used one that we are using in BioEdit or any other alignment softwares. We use .FAS format, or you can download it as text. Then you can have different types of formats for, these are all for when you are doing whole genome assembly and so on analysis, such analysis. You can download whichever is the format required for your particular work, you can download it from assembly. Okay. this is assembly, then the other one was nucleotide. Then genome, genome is what we have searched and we got the report, genome reference sequence report and all from genome. Then this NLM catalog, it is usually related to the published or available, not this type of genomic data, but it is the published versions of this database. If you have a query like, do you have any published data? Usually we depend on NLM catalog while publishing, like to get, while referencing, to get the short forms of any journals and so on. For example, short name of a journal. Many of the publishers want to list in the abbreviated form. So you can get an abbreviation from this NLM catalog. That is the standard method of abbreviation which is available. So we can not only for genomic analysis, we can use for our manuscript formatting also, we can use NCBI, NLM catalog. It is there, it will give an abbreviation of what is the title of the journal. And you can get the whole report of the journal, like which publisher, how is it indexed and so on. So such data is available in NLM catalog. Then you can have this, you can search for books, then PubMed is there, OM, IM and so on. Such structures are given in this one, and this is a, so what is NCBI? It is a primary database. And next is PDB, Protein Data Bank. This is the website of Protein Data Bank. So if you want to download the sequence of a protein, not the sequence, the structure of a protein, a 3-dimensional structure of a protein, you can download, you can search the key term. PDB will be having PDB ID. PDB will give certain PDB ID, just like we got accession number in NCBI, this PDB will give a PDB ID to a particular protein. Which is the receptor for COVID virus? Which is the receptor for COVID-19? ACE. What is the full form? What is the expansion? Angiotensin converting enzyme 2. ACE2 is the receptor. Most of the sequences are with their inhibitors. Let me check by random. See, this is the crystal structure of, these are the different IDs of angiotensin converting enzyme. You can just go through in your system also. You can have the literature related to this and also the structure, the binding sites and so on related to this protein. You can have a 3D view of the structure. the other image, the previous page, you can see it here. Also, we can download it in the FASTA format, the PDB format and MMCIF format from this website. So, when you are doing or when you are trying for a docking study, that is what is more applicable in drug designing. So, when you are going for a docking study, you can download the receptor from here. The receptor structure can be downloaded, but usually this receptor structure will be with an inhibitor. So, you can remove the inhibitor while doing the docking study. Okay. This is how you can select the PDB format along with a header. Header is required for viewing and also while docking. So, you can download the PDB format with header and then here PDB format itself, here it is displayed. See, it requires some other functions for working like RASMOL or JMOL for visualizing structure. For visualizing PDB format, we require some other softwares. That is all. I think these are something which is related to drug designing and such studies. I think you will be getting such informations in next sessions.